to win all the genetic lottery. No, there's going to be tons of poor kids and middle class kids who are or just as good, if not better. You have to provide them the opportunity, the fair chance to succeed. You have to believe in them. So this isn't about disempowering anyone. It's about empowering all of those kids who are doing the right thing or smart and want to work hard so they could build their own companies and add to the economy.
What in general is your view on meritocracy?
So I love meritocracy. I wish that we lived in a meritocracy, and I want to drive towards living in a meritocracy. So that's why I don't like equality of results. So, okay, now people that are on the left will get super mad at that and go, what do you mean? Well, okay, brother, let's say you're at work and you got one guy who's working his ass off, another guy that's going, I don't care, I'm not going to do it, right? Well, the guy who works super hard has to pick up the slack. Now he's working twice as hard, right? And now you want the same results? You want the same salary as that guy? No, brother, no. He's working twice, 4 times, 10 times harder than you. That's not fair. Fairness matters. We wound up, we're in the suburbs of Jersey, but we wound up in Freehold eventually. And we lived across a farm, which is kind of, in central Jersey, it happens, right? And it was called Fair Chance Farm. I was like, how did I get this? Is amazing, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. That's the essence of America, and that's what I want to go back to. So we've got to create that opportunity, not just because it's the moral thing to do, but because it's also the economically smart thing to do. If you enable all those great people that are in lower income classes and middle income classes, you're going to get a much better economy, a much stronger democracy. So that's the direction we got.
So again, it's about balance. But what do you think about DEI policies? Say in academia and companies, so the movement as it has evolved. Where's that on the balance? Is that how far is it pushing towards equality of outcome versus equality of opportunity?
Okay, so now we're getting into social issues, right? So this is where we all rip each other apart, and then the people at the top laugh their ass off at us and go, we got to fighting over trans issues. They're killing each other. It's hilarious. And they're so busy, they don't realize we're running the place, right? Okay, but let's engage. Some people will look at DEI and go, well, that just gives me an opportunity, just like anyone else. I love DEI. Another person will look at it and go, no, that says that you should be picked above me, and I hate DEI, right? So the reality of DEI is a little bit more complicated. And so, but you got to go back. So first, did we need affirmative action in the 1960s? Definitely. Why? All the firefighter jobs in South Carolina, as an example, are going to white guys. All the longshoreman jobs in New York, LA, wherever you have it, are all going to white guys because that's how the system was. Yes, also in the North, right? So we now are in a civil rights era. We decide we're going to go towards equality. Minorities, in that case, mainly Black Americans, had to find a way to break in. I'm not trying to, like, if you're a longshoreman and it's a good job, you naturally want to pass it on to your son. I get your instinct. I don't hate you for it, right? But we got to let Black kids also have a shot at it, right? So you need it in the beginning. But at a certain point, you have to phase it out. So when I was growing up, it's now in the late 80s, early 90s, I hated affirmative action. And I've been principled on it from day one. And to this day, I'm not in favor of affirmative action. I say it on the show all the time. Why? I'm a minority. Being a Turk, I grew up Muslim. I'm an atheist now, but generally speaking, a Muslim is certainly a minority in America, and pretty much a hated one overall. But I didn't check off Muslim or Turkish or any ethnicity when I applied to college because I believe in a meritocracy, as we were talking about. But we don't really have a meritocracy now. And so I can come back to that. But right now, so I didn't check it off because I didn't want an unfair advantage because I want to earn it. So now I'm in law school and I'm hanging out with right wingers because at that point I'm a Republican. And one of the guys says to me about one of our Black student going to Columbia, he says, oh, I wonder how he got in here. God, that is the problem with affirmative action. It devalues the accomplishments of every minority in the country. You have to transition away from it. If you don't, it sets up a caste system, and that caste system is lethal to democracy. So, does DEI go too far in some instances? Yes. But is it a boogeyman that's going to take all the white jobs and make them black, as Trump would say, black jobs, right? And give minorities too much power, etc. No, the idea isn't to rob you and to give all the opportunity to minorities. The idea is to make it equal. But as the pendulum swings, did it swing too far in some directions? Yes. The left can't acknowledge that, and the right thinks can't acknowledge that. Of course, at some point, you got to give a chance for others to break in so they have a fair chance.
By the way, Michelle Obama had a good line about the black jobs in the GNC
Great
speech,
line. I
where
love that.
somebody should tell Trump that the presidency might be just one of those black jobs. Anyway, but why do you think the left doesn't acknowledge when DI gets ridiculous, which it in certain places and in certain places at a large scale has gotten ridiculous?
Because people are taught to just be in the tribe they're in and to believe it 100%. Like, I've gotten kicked out of every tribe. I might be the most attacked man in internet history, partly because we've been around forever, and partly because I disagree with every part of the political spectrum, because I believe in independent thought. And the minute you vary a little bit, people go nuts. And so the far left tribe is gonna go with their preset ideology, just like the far right tribe is. So, for example, on trans issues, we've protected trans people for over 20 years on the Young Turks. We fought for equality for trans people and for all LGBTQ people for 2 decades. We did it way before anyone else did. When Biden came out in favor of gay marriage in 2013, we're like, this is comically late. So, like, we're all supposed to, like, congratulate him in the year 2013 that he thinks gay people should have the same rights as straight people. And then he had to push Obama to get there, right? So, on the other hand, I'm like, guys, if you allow trans women to go into professional sports, not at the high school level, but professional sports, but let's say they go into MMA or boxing, and a trans woman, I mean, it happens in boxing, it happens in MMA, punches a biological woman so hard that she kills her, right? So you're going to set back trans rights 50 years. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to help you. You have to do bounds of reason. So when I say simple things like that, and I say you give LeBron James every hormone blocker on planet Earth, he's still going to dominate the WNBA. Okay. It would be comical. He might score 100 points a night. Okay. And they'll say, oh, that's outrageous. And some have called me Nazi for saying that trans women or that professional leagues should make their own decisions on whether they allow trans women in or not. So why do they say that? Because they're so besieged, they think we cannot give an inch. We cannot give any ground. If you give any ground, you're a Nazi. Okay. So we've got to get out of that mindset. You can't function in a democracy and be in an extreme position and expect the rest of the country to go towards your extreme position.
So why do you think we are not in a meritocracy?
So because of the corruption, for example, but remember, corporate media is the matrix, and they plug you into cable, right? In the old days. Now it's a little bit different because of online media, but especially 10 years ago, and remember, we started 22 years ago. So I've been losing my mind over how obvious corporate media corruption has been for decades now, right? But no one acknowledged it until online media got stronger. But one of the myths that corporate media creates is the myth of meritocracy. Not that meritocracy can't exist or shouldn't exist, but they pretend it exists today. So the problem with that myth, Lex, is that it gets people thinking, well, if they're already rich, they must have merited it by definition. So all the rich have merit. And the reverse of that, if you're poor or middle class, well, you must not have merited wealth. So you're no good. We don't have to listen to you. And that's a really dangerous, awful idea. And so if we get to a meritocracy one day, I'll be the happiest person in America. But right now, look, here I'll give you an example that I put in the book. And it's not us, this other folks did this YouTube video. I can't even quite find who they were, but it was a brilliant video. And they said, okay, we're going to do a 100-yard race. But hold on, before we start, anyone who has two parents, take 2 steps forward. Anyone who has went to college, take another 2 steps forward. Anyone who doesn't have bills to pay for education anymore, take 2 steps forward. And they do all these things, right? And then at the end, before they start, somebody's 20 yards from the finish line, and a lot of people are still at the starting line. And then they go, okay, now we're going to run a race. And the guy who's right next to the finish line wins. And they go, meritocracy. Okay.
So the challenge there is to know which disparities, when you just freeze the system and observe, are actually a result of some kind of discrimination or flaw in the system, versus the result of meritocracy, of the better runner being ahead.
That's right. There are some parts that are easy to solve, Lex. So, you know, if you donated to a politician and he gave you $1 billion subsidy, that's not meritocracy.
Right. So if you follow the money, you can see the flaws in the system.
Exactly. And so, and again, nothing's ever perfect at any snapshot of history, right? Or of the moment. You're going to be at some point in the pendulum swing. But if you trust the people and you let the pendulum swing, but not wildly, then you're going to get to the right answers in the long run.
So you think this woke mind virus that the right refers to is a problem, but not a big problem?
No. So the right wing drives me crazy. So look, guys, your instincts of populism is correct. Your instincts of anti-corruption is correct, right? And I love you for it. And so, and in a lot of ways, the right wing voters figured out the whole system's screwed before left wing voters did. Now, I shouldn't say left wing voters, because progressives and left wing have been saying it for not only decades, but maybe centuries, right? But Democratic voters, a lot of Democratic voters, some of them actually like this current system. A lot of them have been tricked into liking this current system. And the left should be fighting against corruption harder than the right. But right now, unfortunately, that's not the case. So there's a lot that I like about right-wing voters, okay? But you guys get tricked on social issues so easily, right? So how many people are involved in trans high school sports, and a girl who should have finished first in that track race in the middle of Indiana finished second? First of all, this is the big crime. And how many people are involved? About 13 out of a country of 330 million people. And you can't see that that's a distraction, right? So, and everything they did that is like bait that the right-wing media puts out there, they run after. I mean, Tucker Carlson doing insane segments about M&M's should be sexier. Mr. Potato Head has gender issues. Guys, get out of there. Get out of there. It's a trap. Okay.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that there absolutely. It doesn't mean that there's larger scale issues with things like DEI that aren't so fun to talk about or viral to talk about on an anecdotal scale. There is DI does create a culture of fear with cancel culture, and it does create a kind of culture that limits the freedom of expression, and it does limit the meritocracy in another way. So you're basically saying, forget all these other problems. Money is the biggest problem.
So first of all, on AOC, as an example, and I don't mean to pick on her, but she won through the great work of her and Shoykat Chakrabarti and Corbin Trent and others who were leaders of the Justice Democrats that went and helped her campaign. They were critical help. And we all told her the same thing. So it's not about me. And so we all said, you've got to challenge the establishment, and you've got to work on money in politics first. Because if you don't work on money in politics and you don't fix that, you're going to lose on almost all other issues. But she didn't believe us because it's uncomfortable. And all the progressives that went into Congress, they drive me crazy. They think, oh, no, you're exaggerating. No, these are, and the minute they get in, all of a sudden, my colleagues, right? Your colleagues hate you, and they're going to drive you out. You're a sucker. And Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, what did they do? They drove them out. Marie Newman drove them out, right? And because they're not on your side, they're not your colleagues. And what happened to $15 minimum wage? And I remember talking to one of those Congress people, I won't leave out the name, and saying, hey, they're not going to do $15 minimum wage. And he's like, oh, Cenk, you're out of the loop. Nancy Pelosi assured us that they are going to do $15 minimum wage. I'm like, I love you, but you're totally wrong. Moneyed interests are not going to do $15 minimum wage. You have to start fighting now, right? And they didn't get it, so they lost on almost all those issues because it's all about incentives and disincentives and rules. If you don't fix the rules, you're going to constantly run into the same brick wall. Now, the second issue that we were talking about is in the culture wars. The rest of us are stuck between the two extreme 2%ers, right, on both sides. So the 2%er on the left goes, if you're a white woman, you need to shut up and listen now, okay? That's ridiculous. No, you don't. If you're a white woman, you have every right to speak out. You have every right that every other human being has. And so would I love for all of us to listen to one another, to have empathy for one another and go, hey, I wonder how a right-winger thinks about this. I wonder how a left-winger thinks about this. I wonder why they think that way, right? I love that and I want that. So I want you to listen, but I don't want you to shut up. So that 2% gets extreme, and I don't like it. But on the right wing, you got your 2% who think that that's all that's happening on the left, and that's all that's happening in American politics. And they think the entire left believes that tiny 2%, right? And so they hate the left. And they're like, oh, I'm not going to shut up. I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm not going to do any of these things. And I'm not going to do any. That's a freedom. And then a Republican comes along and goes, oh, yeah, that thing you call freedom, that's deregulation for corporations because you shouldn't really have freedom. Companies should have freedom, right? And then the guy goes, yeah, freedom for ExxonMobil. No, brother, they tricked you.
Yeah, the 2% on each side is a useful distraction for the corruption of the politicians via money. Still, I'm talking about the 96% that remains in the middle and the impact that DEI policies has on them.
So here's where it gets absurd. I'll give you a good example of absurdity. So in a school, I believe in California, they noticed that Latino students were not doing as well in AP and honors classes. So they canceled AP and honors classes. Oh, come on. What are you doing? That's nuts. No, your job is to help them get better grades, get better opportunity, etc. That's the harder thing to do and the right thing to do. Your job isn't, I'm going to make everything equal by taking away the opportunity for higher achievement for other students. If that's what you're doing and you think you're on the left, you're not really on the left. I actually think that's like an authoritarian position that no progressive in their right mind would be in favor of. So, but it's all definitional. So here's another example of definitional: communism. Like they say, oh my God, Kamala Harris is a communist. Well, when you're telling on yourself, brothers and sisters, when you say that, that means A, I don't know what communism means, and B, I don't have any idea what's going on in American politics. Kamala Harris is a corporatist. That's her problem. Not that she's a communist. She's on the other end of the spectrum, right? The idea that Kamala Harris would come into office and say, that's it, there's no more private property. We're going to take all of your homes and it's now government property, all your cars, etc. She was not going to get within 1 billion miles of that. Her donors would never allow her to get within 1 billion miles of that. That is so preposterous that when you say something like that, it's disqualifying. Like, I can't debate someone who thinks that Democrats are communists when they're actually largely corporatists. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so let's go there. So when people call her a communist, they're usually referring to certain kinds of policies. So do you think, I think it's a ridiculous label to assign to Kamala Harris, especially given the history of communism in the 20th century and what those economic and political policies have led to, the scale of suffering that led to.